All right, here we go, Joe.
Here we go once again. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Good to see you. End of the
Yeah.
last day of the year.
Last day of the year. Yeah. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Eve or whatever it is. So it's cool.
Yeah.
Any fun plans this evening?
Local restaurant down the street. They do a good job. We don't go out in the evening. We don't go out till midnight much anymore on New Year's Eve, unless
Okay.
it's at my place or something like that. This year, get a nice dinner. Maybe I'll be awake at the ball. Maybe I won't.
I'm about the same. Yeah. I don't know. When I'm back home, I just like to be back home, kind of a hermit. I don't really like to get out that much. So, yeah, a couple weeks I'm off to Central America just for a family trip, and then off to
Nice.
literally the next day go to day-to-day Texas. So it's like it starts back over. So I want to hang out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It just gets going. It just gets going. And yet things change so much, right?
Yeah, exactly. So kind of end of year. This actually coincides with we have a monthly standing call. We've had that for years. I don't even know how many years now, but it's cool. It just happens to coincide with the last day of the year. What's going on in your mind? Like, what are you thinking about 2024? And I guess
Yeah, I mean, it's always somebody, I think I'm one of those people who has a hard time thinking on one level. I don't want to make myself sound smart. It's more like I'm more unfocused. Like, hey, what's going on with my life? What's going on with the, immediately around me? What's going on with sort of the ecosystem? I think 2024 was a big year, of course. A lot of things happened. I mean, okay, first of all, AI in the background, either changing or threatening to change everything, right? And I'm committed to keeping this end of the year wrap up and look as on an optimistic note, right? But we got to acknowledge when things are changing, that creates, the senses of opportunity, the senses of optimism, but there's a lot of sense of fear and uncertainty for people, right? When you can't see the road ahead of you, you slow down, you get a little uncertain. You're wondering what's happening. So I think you got to call that out, right? AI is creating lots and lots of opportunities. It's creating a lot of uncertainty too.
Yeah. What uncertainties are you seeing?
Well, I think, for the most part, we like progress, right? We like things getting better. If your wheat crops double all of a sudden, that's good for everyone who wants bread, right? But it might not be that great for the farmers. I mean, for some of the farmers, yes, the ones who are already established. But how about you're the new guy who's now going into a super competitive market, right? Right. And so I think look at AI, we've increased capacity in a lot of different places, access to information, ease of processing. I can go ask, Perplexity, not to call them out, for like, hey, give me 5 good places to go buy Burton's step-on bindings, and it'll give you links to sites, right? I mean, that's something I'm doing for myself via Google search or whatever before, but like, you just saved me a bunch of time. And if you're thinking like an economist, you've reduced the friction in the system, you're increasing money velocity. That could be good for the economy. That's also good for me, saving me time. It's good for Burton, help you find the vendors and so on. But maybe it's bad for those sites that are like, their business was helping you find things already. Like, I don't need to go to Google Shopping or whatever site. My prediction 2 years ago when ChatGPT came out was that we're going to see a big impact on marketplaces. Right? Because marketplaces are mostly about the exchange of information, connecting suppliers and consumers together, and they take a little cut for that, enablement of the transaction. But it just got a lot easier to build a marketplace,
A lot easier to do a lot of things.
A lot easier to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? So it's generally good. It improves it. It gives you more bang for the buck. It's good for the economy, but it creates change. And for some people, that's going to be difficult.
I think the people the concerns I hear from people who are sort of rank and file at companies, right, where, there's definitely some consternation that AI could, replace large swaths of jobs or, replace a lot of tasks that you do, in which case your job changes. So I think that's the nature of the trepidation. At the same time, I was writing about this morning where I felt like it's, when I talk to developers, for example, and developing people who write software are those who are often pointed at as, being the first ones to take advantage of AI, right? You have copilots, you have cogen, all this other stuff, agents with Devin, all this other stuff, which is still super, super new. But there's kind of two camps. One camp I see, which is the one I find interesting, is people who are finding more productivity gains
Mhm.
because with tools like Cursor and Copilot and so forth, they're just able to write a lot more code, and that means they're able to plow through tasks a lot faster. And so part of me wonders what this means. You mentioned economists and reducing friction in systems and so forth. I think the big friction we have in tech is just the sheer amount of toil, and
That's well.
backlogs and tech debt and just velocity and so forth. If we can increase that, I think that reduces hopefully a lot of the toil we have to incur. Hopefully it helps pay down some debt, but I think at the same time, hoping it also opens up the types of problems we can focus on solving, right? If we can now automate or semi-automate the solutions over here with more kind of redundant, mundane tasks, hopefully we can focus on things, I don't know, like data modeling and things that we always preach about we should be doing, and we never get around to it for some reason because we're always busy dealing with the crap over here. And so
Right.
I read an interesting article the other week where it talked about the I need to find it, but it talked about just if you view the amount of code yet to be written in the world,
Yeah.
then you view the amount of things yet to be automated. I
Yeah.
mean, that's tech debt that we can hopefully attack now at basically zero marginal cost, whereas before that was simply never going to happen. And so if you can think of the things we have yet to build, that's also pretty awesome, actually.
It is
So
awesome. It is. You're calling out one of those funny things that happens with sort of tech debt economics in terms of cycles of innovation, right? Sometimes it pays off to build up a bunch of tech debt because suddenly there's a cheaper way to pay it down, right? And then and so we might be, that might be that's gonna probably happen in a lot of places for us. And yeah, I think toil is a really I think I've heard the word toil more in 2024 than I have in all the rest.
in what context have you heard toil?
Well, it's all toil about like work that required a person to do, the companies need to pay a person to do, but you don't really enjoy it all that much.
Yeah.
Let's say let's say you're a paralegal or attorney, you're doing document discovery, and you're just like, hey, go through these 50,000 Slack messages and these 10,000 documents and look for these kind of references, right? That's toil. It's highly skilled toil because you need someone who has a judgment to find that signal inside the noise, right? And we are seeing, right, there's a lot of again, keeping on the optimistic side, there's a lot of increased capacity there with models being able to go through this stuff at 10,000 times the rate, pretty high accuracy,
Easy.
large reduction in toil, right? So reduction in toil, anytime, right? I mean, technology is always about making things easier or creating new capacity, but you do all change creates some danger, right?
Mm-hmm. You
Even
saw
yeah,
we saw it during the Industrial Revolution. I mean, that was an age that was, I think, pretty precarious for a lot of workers, and there was a lot of violence. I think people don't
yeah,
remember. I mean, what are you talking? Railroads? You're talking, the Luddites revolution and so forth. There was
right,
a
right.
ton of violence that would make today look actually pretty tame by comparison. I think
Yeah,
people forget how violent things were back in the day as well.
for sure.
But it's people were definitely concerned back then. But I don't know. It's
Yeah, I mean, like there was a market for child labor, right? Not just because children
yeah,
work cheaply, but because of their physical characteristics. There were times like having a smaller body, smaller fingers, doing all this stuff made them the better worker for a particular situation. I think very few people are sad that we eliminated those jobs. Right? You stop putting children in danger. We mostly, unfortunately, some of those are coming back, but at the same time, those kids didn't have jobs anymore, right? Now, I'm a socialist, right? What we should be doing is taking the productivity from from all that. They're taking the income, the revenue generated from all that productivity and using it to fund schools and hospitals and daycare and all that stuff, right? See, it doesn't seem really radical for me to say that
yeah,
uh, in practice, right?
yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Yeah, it's I mean, at the risk of getting to uh, macro, but it is interesting. Or so I think in the U.S. you would think, well, yeah, the productivity is we solved a lot of these problems with labor and whatnot. At least the ones you mentioned. It's I'm hoping more resources are plowed back into schools to help prepare kids for the world that they're about to be entering. When I look at my kids who are 11 and 14, they're both boys.
Yeah.
you know, my oldest kid's going to a college prep class right now in his middle school, and he comes back and he says, "This is useless." You know, partly because he's my kid, so he kind of knows what's up. But I'm like, yeah, you know, AI, I would pay attention to things that robots probably will have trouble doing if you're looking for a career. I wouldn't be looking at things that are going to be automated. You know, but look, you know, I talked to the counselor at this program, and she's well aware of AI, but she has to hold her tongue and talk about things that, you know, you should get a job doing, you know, this or the other job. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I probably wouldn't recommend that right now, but you know,
Yeah. Well, that's one of those events, that kind of debt, right? You get the organizational debt. You know, I mean, a really mundane example is like your textbooks get out of date, right? And if facts are changing, you know, we've learned that something was wrong, or we're just getting lots of new discoveries, you know, it's hard for the physical textbook. Of course, who has a paper textbook now, but physical textbook to keep up, you know, so those are forms of debt. Yeah, I know. I have all this, me too, right? I actually much prefer physical textbooks in a lot of ways because you can flip back and forth between pages, you know, but my kids don't agree with me. Yeah. And, but that's a form of debt too, generated by change, you know.
oh yeah,
You know, if you go you take the notions of increased utility we were just talking about, and ease and reduction of friction, and apply it to knowledge. You know, that's an area I'm genuinely hopeful for. Like, you know, our business, right? We've been building data warehouses, data platforms, doing data science, all this stuff for big businesses. You know, I've been really focused on social impact companies, right? But the thing I'm probably most passionate about and I get excited about is when like everyday people without lots of special training are able to get the knowledge they need to go do what they want, right? You know, and maybe a little bit of training, right? But you know, in the old days, you learn how to read a map. That unlocked the world for you, right? Didn't take that much training, a little bit, and then fast forward to things like Google Maps, where they're giving you the directions. You know, you don't even have to learn how to read a map, really, right? And now you can get to where you want to get to. You know, okay, you know, if you're a bit of a curmudgeon, you may argue, it's like, oh, well, kids these days, if you know the internet goes down, they're screwed. Well, yeah, that is true. You run out of signal or someplace, but for the most part, people get where they want to go much more easily, right? Fewer people lost, fewer people in danger, less traffic. All these things are probably true. So, you know, I'm thinking about like with some of the advances we're seeing in terms of like the small data movement. And like small data is defined as 50 gigs or less. You could fit a lot of shit into 50 gigs, right? You know, processing getting so cheap, and looking at what they're doing with or like the availability of real-time data. Like you look at the Jetstream protocol with Blue Sky and so on. I mean, it's like I'm trying to put my finger on it, and maybe this is an adventure at some point, but I feel like we're getting closer to almost the Star Trek world of knowledge, where you say, "Hey, computer, give me a report that does this," and okay, let's back off of Star Trek a little bit, but let's say, "Hey, organization, I'm interested in doing reporting on my town in terms of like age of buildings, this and that, and so on and so on, but I don't know how to go get the data set and put it in a place where I can load it, or even how to work with that necessarily data." But I can picture an org, right? A group of people, or a federation, or a match, or something where like, okay, well, a lot of these assets have an API. If it has an API, a model should be able to talk to it. You should be able to construct a pipeline. You should be able to, consult a library of, let's see, accepted semantics. Let's make up some terms, like a semantic library, where that's just waiting for data, right? There's certain language we use to describe buildings, like in this example. And are we approaching a world we can just get that information? Without, again, I love SQL. I love data modeling. I love a lot of this technical stuff. But the average person should not have to write SQL to get their question answered.
No.
All right.
It's always been the goal of self-serve analytics too, is you should be able to get the data you want, and now it's, data is not just stuff in rows and columns, it's text and video and audio and whatever other medium you want to think of. And yeah, I think there's a lot of doors being opened. At the same time, it's interesting because when I talk to friends in the data quality, for example, and observability and so forth, they're seeing a lot of interest now. The discussions used to be, kind of pre-ChatGPT, I think, interest in AI. Like, well, what do we need data quality for? That's a dumb investment. Like, it's going to take up too much time. We manage to make money without it. So like, why do we want to do this? I mean, this sounds to me and you, this sounds like a bullshit argument.
Yeah.
And but this was literally conversations that would happen often. Because executives.
It's like saying, why do we need health inspectors in the food industry?
Yeah, people aren't dying.
Right.
What do we care? Right. But now with AI, I think there's a realization like, oh yeah, the data needs to make sense. So and there's no executive these days who's going to say, oh, there's probably very few. There's probably some, but very few of them are going to say, well, we don't need to start doing AI in our companies. I mean, you'd seem a bit old-fashioned and probably be on a quick road to retirement. So forced retirement, that is. But but that's kind of how it is. It seems like a lot of these things are getting double takes. Like data modeling is one of these things where like you and I need to do it, but the average person doesn't need to know about it. That assumes that it's also being done behind the scenes. But like I know with the community I've been building on data modeling, it's been seeing a lot of growth and a lot of interest, which even surprised me. I thought that I'd be talking to basically kind of a senior citizens home of data practitioners, but it's a lot of younger people who are interested in this, and a lot of people of all walks of life, all types of companies. I don't think it's exclusive to anybody, but I literally thought when I started, I was like, I'm going to be talking to the people who wrote these books that nobody reads anymore, right? Like that's literally who I thought I'd be talking to. Not the case.
Yeah, no, it's much more mainstream than I think it's ever been in my career. It's just there's a bit of a dilution in a sense that there's fewer specialists and there's more generalists. A lot of people I run into who are interested in knowing something about modeling. I mean, most people, if you talk to someone and say, hey, you know what a star schema is? They're like, oh yeah, of course. Now, and then you're sort of surprised when they don't in some ways, right? If they work with that, but yeah. I mean, it's not ubiquitous, but it is a lot more. It's a lot less esoteric than it used to be.
Oh yeah, and a lot of these AI tools, I mean, they're fully capable of, I think, producing a pretty decent looking model. Obviously, there's some work you need to do. That's part of your job, being a domain expert who understands data. But these tools ain't half bad.
No. Well, it reminds me. Turns out college philosophy was actually useful, right? I think about, Noam Chomsky talked about the deep grammar languages and so on, and that deep grammar exists whether you know it's there or not, right? Yeah. And so frequently, I think that data modeling should be more called like data mapping or metadata mapping. Structure's already there, right? But just finding a way to describe it. Your sales transaction, that data model exists in a cage of dimensions, whether you want it to or not, right? Time is there, customer is there, product is there,
and something happened, right? It was an event that happened in your business,
some collision of dimensions, right? And then so like, oh yeah, it makes sense. So yeah, so a lot of times it's like, and I think that's some of the hubris that maybe inflicted our industry early on, is the modelers. You've run into people like that. The modelers who thought they were God. Like, I am going to define how we're going to do things, right? And they realize they have a lot less control than they think they do because the structure is already there.
The structure's there. It's interesting because but as I go back and what is this book here? It's Chris State's 7th edition of Intro to Database Systems, which is a good book if you want. I think the relational models take on nearly every topic, like security, concurrency, decision support. This chapter is interesting, where it goes through his thoughts on things like star schemas and dimensional modeling and so forth. And so and I think it depends on the viewpoint you're taking. If you're coming from the relational view, then everything should just be a relation, and anything that defies it is garbage and doesn't work. As I was talking about in my group today, obviously there are a lot of companies out there that have data sets that are non-relational in character, and they seem to be doing just fine. So I think Date's whole thing is, well, would you build a bridge according to principles that don't agree with science or engineering? And I'm like, yeah, I mean that's for structures, but maybe you could tweak a business's data set to perform, to be relationally complete or something. But there are plenty of businesses out there that are making gobs of money off of, I think, pretty subpar data models. And so the tension I've always thought about, as I'm writing this book and talking to people, is like, how much of this actually matters?
Yeah.
The day.
What difference will it make?
Yeah, yeah, it's attention because it's hidden, it's silent. Like bridge collapses, like the one in was it Rhode Island? I think it was, or whatever it was, the one big thing that collapsed, I don't know, last year, whatever. But that causes a lot of problems for people. Shipping can't happen, and
Yeah.
but tables are busted, and you can duct tape over them because software is very incremental, and you can patch things until it reaches a scale. I guess you can't, but it is interesting. So,
It
but
is interesting, and I mean, I'm always going back to like, what do we use knowledge for, right? It's to achieve some better outcome. We have some goal, we have some objective, we have some need, and we want to act against that, and that's why I reach out to knowledge. This is almost like maybe even a little bit spicy, but say, but like knowledge itself is a necessary evil. I mean, I like knowledge because I like the acquisition of knowledge, and I like the impact it has on my mind. But like, let's say I was making waffles, and I was making, and let's say I'm making gluten-free waffles and I don't have a recipe. If this was 1982, of course I was 12 at the time, I'd be going to the public library. So,
right.
so strap on your shoes, go to the library, get there, realize you forgot your library card, come back, get the library card, go back there, go to card catalog, try to figure out how to use a card catalog to go find a cookbook, and then go through a whole bunch of cookbooks looking for a recipe on gluten-free waffles, which of course you're not going to find back then, right? That's all that acquisition of knowledge is all friction there.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up at that time, you enjoy the experience of going to the library, but it's still labor. These days it's much easier for me to go get that information, that knowledge, so that I can feed my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's the real outcome. That's the thing that really matters. That outcome. My wife's hungry. She doesn't eat gluten. She likes waffles. Right?
Well,
And,
yeah, and take it a step further too. In today's world, I mean, you can not only just come up with a recipe, you can have a service just automatically get the ingredients and then just deliver them to your house. And I mean, for God's sake, you could probably put them in your Blend-O-Matic or whatever it is, and it would just make the bread for you too. So it's
there's so
many too. It's awesome. Yeah.
And those, I always like the production of food as a metaphor for use of knowledge too, right? Because there's just none of these things. It's all like facilitation and small things being added together. Okay, I'm using a ready-made mix. I'm using an electric waffle maker. I'm using a waffle maker that has a non-stick coating, and so on and so on and so on. All these things lead to geometric effects in terms of feeding people.
Yep.
I mean, I cooked a meal for 100 people one time like with a couple hours notice, but I had facilities. And I had a bunch of knowledge in my head already.
Mm-hmm.
That would be easier now, because it'd be even easier for me to go look at the ratios and this and that. And hey, if I'm going to do 40 pounds of chicken, how many ounces of liquid soy do I need to get the proper degree of, salt into it, right? And it also makes it safer in terms of, just like outcomes, as opposed to just me just winging it, right? It's like, oh wow, I can get more certainty. But I think that's what I'm sort of optimistic about going into 25 and coming out of 24, is that it's just getting easy. I'm hoping that we invest in systems and we do things that allow to spread the wealth more in terms of knowledge. The utility to make it easier for the average person to get what they need. Not just the specialists. And when you do that, right, let's say you're inside your business. If you need fewer specialized skills to get your report or so on, then you can bring in more people with diverse viewpoints, backgrounds, genders, what have you, to tackle the business problem. Right? Like if you can only access your data through code, that some of those brain cells you might have spent on, creative ventures, on writing, on being able to give a persuasive speech, on whatever, are going to have to be spent on coding instead. But if you don't have to spend it on coding, maybe you can do a better presentation. Maybe right? Maybe you can produce a better final product.
I just hope LLMs don't cause a feedback loop of sort of homogenous, non-diverse thinking.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's one of the big dangers right now is even with Google searches, you could get all the links you wanted, and now it's you get the answer, quote unquote, and then and that's, I think it's what people are increasingly relying on, right? Like the number of people you mentioned Perplexity, the number of people I know who are using ChatGPT as their search engine is that grows every day to the point
Every
where
day.
Google's pretty old school at this point, right?
Well,
So
the Google search engine usually gives me, frequently answers coming from a model now too, right? It gives me a different
yeah,
type of answer, right? And they're better answers usually, assuming
usually.
they're right. Assuming they're
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think also what it means is, you mentioned going to the library in the 80s. I mean, I practically lived at a library when I was a kid, and it was
Yeah.
the serendipity of finding, discovering books, and I think blending ideas is something where, remixing was a hard thing to do mentally, but I think that was a skill that a lot of people, I don't know, a lot of people, but the curious had it back then, whereas now I don't know that kids will have that as much. And,
I don't
you
think
know,
they will.
no,
Yeah. And it's pretty well documented, that homogeneity of thought that you just called out. That's a real thing. It's a real thing. And if you look at, so Airbnb, of course, is probably the largest, or one of the largest data sets of like residential properties that have ever existed, right? And especially from a perspective of appeal to being rented, like, is this, it's like, here's a product, if it's visually appealing and the price is good, then people rent it. If it's not, then people don't, for the most part.
Mhm.
Well, it turns out when you look at that data set, that more and more over the time that Airbnb has been around, that data set's gotten more and more homogenous. Properties around the world, from Morocco to San Francisco to London, are starting to look more and more alike.
Mhm.
Particularly the interiors, right? Very become homogeneous, right?
Because we're all trying to appeal to an algorithm, a thing that I feel like we need to. I think I was watching some, predictions on what YouTube content's going to look like in 2025 and how to, just social media things you should be taking advantage of, and everyone's going to have the same looking stuff.
Yep.
It's just
Yep.
here's the camera angles you need to have for video in 2025. I'm like, okay, so everyone's going to have the same looking videos. So, but that's, I don't know. So,
Yeah.
just for the audience out there, be unique, be yourself.
Yeah. There's, that's the, again, staying on the optimistic side. I'm hoping that if we can reduce toil, we leave up more opportunity for people to be creative, for people to do things for themselves and so on. And it may not go in that direction, but
I
that's
think that's what John Maynard Keynes envisioned when he thought of the 15-hour work week way back, 100 years ago or something. So, yeah, that's awesome. Well, man, it's chatting with you as always.
great chatting with you.
So are you gonna be day-to-day Texas?
What day is that? Next
January
week?
25th.
25th, huh?
Yeah.
There's a slim possibility. I hear that's a good one, right?
It's a good one. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So
yeah, I look to you as my canary, right? I can only go do so many of these a year, so I say, hey, which one? Ask Joe, which one should I go to, right?
That one.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, awesome, dude. Have a good New Year, and we'll see you soon. So,
all right, see you soon. Happy 2025.
Thank you very much. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.